I'm really excited about this panel. This is one that been one of the most requested topics we've had over the last year. This is our 4th year in programming this track, and we're really excited because, like I said, this has been one of the most requested topics. I think it's on everybody's lips with regards to what does omnichannel mean, where is it going, etc. So we're excited about where we go from here. So let me give some introductions. This is the Omnibus of Omnichannel. As I mentioned, this is our session number 4 of the day. We have 2 more, so absolutely please feel free to stay and see those other 2 panels. Our first introduction, Joe Catalano, is the SVP of Sales for Populus Health Technologies. He's going to be the moderator for this panel. Joe has more than 25 years of pharmaceutical arena experience, beginning the journey with Eli Lilly as a diabetes specialist to multiple years in roles with WebMD, Medscape in medical education, REMS, and MPP. Joe was one of the original sales leaders tasked with building the everyday health professional business, and he is currently our Senior Vice President of Sales at Populus Health Technologies. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Lina Josephson is the Omnichannel Insights and Execution Lead for Sumitomo Pharma America. Lina is the head of Omnichannel Insights and Execution at Sumitomo Pharma America, leading a cross-functional team that includes channel experts, digital operations, and insights and innovation individuals. Lina is responsible for developing and executing Sumitomo's full year 24 omnichannel roadmap. In her role, Lina partners with marketers to define omnichannel strategies, measurement frameworks, and segmentation, while also identifying technology solutions that will achieve brand goals, supporting all therapeutic areas, including oncology, women's health, neurology, and urology. Her work will revolutionize the way SMPA engages with customers and advance patient outcomes. Lina joined Sumitomo by way of Sunovion Pharmaceuticals in 2020, holding positions in omnichannel analytics and omnichannel marketing. Prior to entering the pharmaceutical industry, Lina worked at advertising agencies with a focus on e-commerce, banking, and beauty. Welcome, Lina.
Thank you.
Sandy Weag is the EVP of Engagement Strategy and Communications Planning at CMI Media Group. In her role as Head of Media Strategy and Communications Planning, Sandy focuses on redefining and improving the company's approach to planning and core deliverables and cross-skilling the team into high-growth media channels. She is focused on keeping CMI Media Group on the cutting edge of media strategy within the healthcare space. She has over 20 years of digital pharma and healthcare marketing experience, developing strategic initiatives that deliver results. Sandy is driven by a passion for healthcare and the belief that brands can drive better patient outcomes through HCP and consumer engagement. In addition to her agency experience, she has also had roles on both the publisher and the manufacturer sides. Welcome, Sandy. Nikki Frantzen, Senior Manager, Ophthalmology Pharmaceutical Companies. She worked at 2 large media agencies in her early career, Radius Health and CMI, growing her expertise with omnichannel media planning, targeting both physicians and patients for many large pharmaceutical clients. During her 7 years in media, Nikki has worked on everything from product launches to blockbuster drugs within both large and niche health conditions. Nikki joined the digital consumer experience team at Genentech in 2019 and has held various roles at the company. Since then, her current role as Senior Marketing Manager for the ophthalmology franchise, she is responsible for oversight of the patient marketing campaign, including the channel selection and measurement across digital TV and other offline channels.
I'm glad Ray offered to do the intros. All right. Okay, so I'm very excited about this panel as well. Omnichannel's been around for a number of years, 4 or 5 years now, and I'm only now starting to think I understand it. So I'm thrilled that we have 3 experts in the arena from different walks and different backgrounds to kind of help us all understand it a little bit more clearly. What I'd like to do, Nikki, if you could just start us off, is get an understanding of how you define omnichannel, how your company does, and what makes it different from what we were doing, say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Sure, thanks, Joe. Hi everyone, good to see you guys. Welcome. I know it's the first session after lunch, so hopefully you guys are ready to go for the afternoon. I'm really excited to talk about omnichannel. It is something that our company is definitely investing in heavily because we believe when done well, it can truly be a competitive advantage for our brands. So when you ask me to define omnichannel, I think it's helpful to remember what omnichannel is not, right? As a brand marketer, if I want to deliver a marketing message and I send an email, that is one channel. If I send an email and also reach my audience, HCP, or patient with a banner ad, or have a sales rep walk through a door to go talk to their customer in a healthcare professional office, that's multi-channel, right? Delivering a message through various channels. But when you think about omni-channel, it's how these channels orchestrate and work together and talk to one another. And you need really good data to be able to do that, right? Being able to understand what message is being delivered through what channel and what might the next best action or the next best message be to be delivered through a different channel in order to continue the conversation seamlessly across the kind of landscape that you're playing with here. And we expect this in our everyday lives, right? If I buy something online and I have to call customer service, I want them to know what I bought. I want my online channel to talk to my offline channel to continue that customer experience. And like I said, when this is done well, it could truly be a competitive advantage. It creates brand preference and brand choice because it makes it easy for the customer and the consumer at the end of the day. We don't have to constantly be repeating themselves to start the story over again where they need to talk to a brand or a company. We're able to pick up exactly where they left off.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, just building on Nikki's point, obviously orchestration is key. If anybody was in the morning session when Joe Warren from my team was speaking, he brought up the whole notion of omnipresent or omnidynamic. So it is really going beyond just those traditional channels that we think of to meet customers or even audiences if we're talking about DTC, but making those meaningful connections, making sure that they're purposeful. The whole notion of the right place, right time, right message. Omni is all about that. It's about what's delivering most important to and customer base at the most critical times. And ultimately, you said build brand preference. It's also about building brand trust too. Because if you're delivering messages that are important to them and relevant at the time, it's an increased trust overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my fellow colleagues up here did a great job defining it. The only thing that I would add is that it's different from traditional marketing in the sense that you're putting the customer at the center of everything that you do. You have a deep understanding of your customer. You know exactly what their preferences are, and those preferences are revealed through marketing and all the different touch points that they have with your brand to then influence the next action. So it really is all about the customer. It's a customer-centric way of being able to market to individuals.
So let's stay on that. It is all about the customer. Are there particular brands or are there particular products that you think of for Omni and then some that may not be appropriate for Omni, or is everything channeled with the intention of eventually getting to an omni-channel plan?
So I actually love this question, mainly because I think that omnichannel, well, as Nikki said, it can be a competitive advantage. Not every brand is going to be ready for it. Omnichannel requires a deep foundation before you can actually dive in. So for example, if you don't have a deep understanding of your customer, if you don't have data about all of the different touch points that they may have in their journey with you, and if you don't have content available in multiple different iterations of it to be able to send new messages and stay fresh with the customer, you can't do it. So a lot of brands get very excited about omnichannel when they kind of hear about it in different conferences and different settings, but really you need to make sure that you have the foundation to be able to execute in an omnichannel fashion. So the answer is yes, I think eventually, but ultimately that foundation needs to be set.
Yeah, being ready is critical. When Omni first kind of became the buzz 3, 4, 5 years ago, we had our brands come to us and say, I need to do Omni, and think of it as like a tactic or a line on their strategic plan, as opposed to really thinking, what's the foundation that we have to lay to make sure that, to Lina's point, that they're ready from a data perspective, from a messaging perspective, from an asset perspective, and also from an insights perspective to make sure that's done well.
So then staying with that, Sandy, for a second, are there particular elements that need to be present in an omnichannel plan?
Yes, I mean, you can think about it in terms of certain tactics, but I actually want to take a step back on that and think about it. There needs to be intent behind it and purpose, and really understanding what the goals are that you're trying to achieve. So it becomes less about checking the box and really about driving impact. Having a strong measurement plan up front, having those KPIs to make sure that you can define success up front, you're continuously measuring, optimizing, iterating, and continuing to evolve to move forward. Omni's never set it and forget it, so you're always learning, you're always growing, and you're always getting better.
Kind of starting with the end in mind first and building from there.
100%.
Okay. So, Nikki, we'll bring you back into it. What does an omni-channel, a successful omnichannel plan look like?
Yeah, so building on what Sandy said also, I think you have to start with the end in mind. You need to know what you're trying to achieve and what that goal is before you go in and start talking about success and what are those KPIs that get you there, right? It's the age-old, right place, right message, right time that helps you understand what data sources you have, how you can combine the data to tell a story and to continue your search journey seamlessly, which is the key word here, across multiple channels. And coming from the brand marketing perspective, I want to talk a little bit about content here as well, because you can't just say, I'm going to do Omni, or I'm going to have my messages, continue across random channels. You have to have those messages. You have to have the right content in place to actually pull this through. For example, we could be on TV, and we know when we're on TV, search lists goes up. People want to Google the brand, right? So what is the next best message to give a patient or a caregiver or even a doctor in that moment? Probably you shouldn't send them to your TV commercial. They've already seen it, right? So think strategically about the content and the pull through to make sure you have a successful omnichannel in place, and then leverage the data that you get from across these channels to make really smart optimizations, experiment, test different things and different messages to make that engine work a little harder for you.
Are you saying there's a need for custom creation for each channel individually?
Well, yes and no. I think you can have a really strong foundation of your core messages, right? Every brand kind of has that, but it's a way that you flex those messages across channels, and the tweaks and the decisions that you make informed by the data that you get back to help them, to kind of push them along that consideration funnel. We have our awareness messages that are likely going to be on every channel to drive up awareness, but once you're seeing that people are engaging and that awareness is there, you have to have deeper messaging and content ready to continue that conversation.
I think that what Nikki and Sandy have both chimed in with already, definitely hits the mark. I think in general, when you're thinking about successful omnichannel plans, it's the content, it's the data pull through. So making sure that you're getting all of the data back that you would need to be able to make informed decisions, being able to share those results out with other individuals at the corporation that need to make decisions on that data. But ultimately, I think omnichannel at its core is all about the insights that you can get about the customer. What makes them tick? What are their preferences? What do they actually care about? And so ultimately, if you're going to have a successful omnichannel program, you need to make sure that you're considering all of the different interaction points that that customer may have and making it consistent. So it feels like one branded experience, whether they're on their way to the doctor and they see an ad in person, and then when they're leaving the doctor and potentially going and visiting your website. All of those connection points need to talk to each other, link back to the brand, and ultimately feel like one experience.
Yeah, just to add to that, also creating a culture internally where you're open to taking risks and understanding that we might go in and establish really clear business rules based on all the insights that we have, all the things that we think we believe, but being willing and able to pivot too, because there's going to be the unknowns. There could be message we've had market which doesn't quite work, or a certain audience segment isn't quite responding the way that we want to. So having that organization in place that you can make those changes and pivot and be agile in the way that you do it.
So that's perfect. That leads me to my next thought. We plan perfectly, we think end in mind, but what happens when it's not working? What signals are we looking for throughout the program that we might have to dial something up or dial something down, or something's just misplaced? At what point do you start thinking optimization? Where are you seeing these signals? What signals are you looking for that may require you to make some optimizations and make some changes?
So I can start with that. So it's important that at the onset of the campaign you have a measurement framework, and that should be aligned to your brand strategy along with your strategic KPIs. So within omnichannel, you will have a different set of metrics that you'll be able to optimize based upon how quickly that data moves. So there are certain data sets that move fairly slowly, like point of care or TV, and then you have other data sets that you can get down to almost an hour to understand how performance is going, such as with your website and full analytics. So ultimately, you need to make sure that you're thinking about the measurement framework from a holistic perspective, outlining what is your overarching campaign KPI, meaning if I hit this goal, it's the closest proxy to what I would see in my strategic KPIs, such as ROI or revenue or NBRX. So ultimately, if you have that campaign KPI that's most correlated to your strategic KPI, you then can have other diagnostic metrics that you might look at on a more regular basis. So the example that I like to give with consumer is that maybe you may have an awareness goal and you have a certain number that you want to hit. You might also have cross-six measurement that's also on that plan, so then you would be able to assess, am I actually reaching patients that have been diagnosed with my condition? And then when you're thinking about your faster moving data, you may also be looking at things like the efficiency and the engagement that that media is actually driving. So ultimately, you would then be able to say, okay, maybe in this instance, my audience quality, it's a little low, but then you're kind of like, well, let me look at some of my other KPIs that are a little faster moving and see if this actually does play a role. You may end up seeing that that ad is actually really engaging. It may be really efficient. And then when you dig a little bit deeper, you might actually find this is somebody that has been diagnosed with the condition, but they're not as low funnel as I may actually be looking to go for right now. Based upon the cost, this is actually a trade-off where I may actually decide to keep this particular asset and market a little bit longer because I'm now priming my audience for later when they're ready to convert. So ultimately, the measurement framework is going to be how you ultimately will decide what do you want to optimize on, how and when, and this should be designed at the very upfront of the campaign so that way there really aren't any surprises, so to speak, as you're going through and measuring performance. And ultimately, you will see that there would be better performance down the road with your strategic KPIs because you've already correlated it with your campaign KPIs.
Yeah, and if I could add to that too, I loved what you said about the timeliness of the data, right? Because we have our leading indicators and our lagging indicators. And you can't just use one data source here. We talk about media mix modeling a lot, and use that as our source of truth, the model to predict ROI is to show us ROI and MROI in terms of how we tapped out of a certain channel, but those are all lagging indicators. We need something like a cross-six to essentially triangulate all of that data and help us make quicker optimizations within a particular channel, within particular partners. We talk a lot about audience quality and the efficiency about audience quality. What are the different levers you can pull on a quicker basis to increase that audience quality and try to get that at a cheaper rate. That in turn helps build the ROI that we get from our media mix modeling. If we're doing this experimentation, we're optimizing as we go. But no single source, I can't just build a campaign and rely on cross-six or build a campaign and rely on the lagging indicators that I get from Mars. You need both of them to inform each other to really understand what it is your campaign is doing and it's working or not.
And usually those results end up correlating with each other. So if you see strong performance in cross-six, you usually end up seeing fairly strong performance in your media mix model. So it does pay off if you're optimizing along the way and not just kind of thinking about it being like, I'm only going to wait until the end of the campaign. You need to be constantly testing and learning and pivoting. That's really at the core of Omnichannel.
And just from an agency perspective, also being okay and flexible in the way that with the way in which we work with the manufacturer partners from a measurement perspective. Like there's some data that we give access to and react to and action off of, but then obviously the data that we need to get from our clients. So making sure that we have that all set up front, so we have the right information to make decisions off of.
So as a partner, are there non-starters when you're choosing partners as to what their capabilities are to deliver you back data? Is it a necessity to have a data feed in real time, or certain lags are acceptable depending on what performance they're trying to, work on within the plan?
I think we have ideals. We want the data as quickly as possible, but there's also realities. I would say most of our clients are now expecting us to pass data to them on a weekly basis. So there's some partners that we work with that we get it daily. So it really depends. The other thing is we also just don't want to get data just to get data. So we want to make sure that we're getting it at a frequency in which it's actually really be used to be actionable too.
Excellent, thank you. So let's talk about reporting just for a second. So when we are talking about the data, anticipating the data has to be worthwhile, it has to be actionable. What are we expecting? You touched on it there, but just maybe elaborate on daily data feeds. Are you really relying on the media mix? Does it have to be a partner that participates with cross-six, gets picked up in cross-six? Are individual reporting, impact reporting is respected if done in-house and then prepared for you guys? So I'm just trying to get an understanding of, if there are so many different contributors to the omni-channel efforts, they all can't be one size fits all. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the expectations are.
Yeah, I think data for sure is a hot topic, and I'll be totally transparent by saying every time we embark on a new endeavor from an omni-channel's perspective or a new campaign, the first question I get asked from my leadership is, well, what's the ROI? There's so many factors that go into answering that question, and it's hard to say, at this moment in time, our ROI is going to be X, because you truly don't know. You need everything we talked about, from experimentation to good content, to really predict something like that. So yes, getting data as quickly as possible helps with that, but it's almost even worse if we're getting data from multiple sources and it conflicts. And that's why a lot of the times, we have to hold some certain things back. Our media mix is telling us one thing, but our diagnostic measures on profits are saying something else. And this is really, this is really good, but maybe not showing up a positive ROI just yet. So do we need more time? Do we have to run an experiment? Are there other things that we can do to help us understand, what's happening on the front end, what's happening on the back end? And we see this a lot with third-party studies as well, and some of the partners that we work with. They're great, don't get me wrong. We'd love to have, kind of controlled third-party studies, but it needs to complement the data that we already have, because if it's conflicting or if it doesn't line up to the data that we're using in-house, it's hard to put a lot of stake in it if that's ultimately not what is going to be, a right market source of truth.
And I guess I will say, just to add on to what Nikki said, is that with AI, and I think, AI has a lot of applications, especially within omnichannel, but ultimately by using the data that you currently had, and again, kind of like what I had mentioned earlier, it's going to come in at different levels and at different times. Some data is fast moving, some data is slower moving, so you have to use the best that you have. But then with AI, you're actually going to be able to run applications on top of that to potentially do some scenario planning. So you may decide that, okay, like maybe my prior data says that I should only be running in, these types of channels, and I shouldn't be considering print. However, using AI and additional data sets may actually inform that you might use a channel that you've had to consider prior. So, there are a lot of different things that you can do with the data that you have, whether it be predictive modeling to, say what other channels you might potentially want to consider as part of your omnichannel ecosystem. But ultimately, the data that you collect is really, it's very much garbage in, garbage out. So you need to make sure that if you're getting good data, you have good applications that you can do with it. However, if you're not collecting good data, that means that typically you're not going to have the most accurate results either.
That doesn't. Sandy?
Yeah.
Covered it.
Yeah. So you touched on AI, right? And so let's look a little bit to the future. What role do you think AI is going to have in the overall building of omnichannel for me into the future, but for you it might be the present?
I personally love this question. I think we're starting to do more with AI in the pharmaceutical industry, and I think it's only going to continue. A couple of applications I can think of off the bat, which Pfizer is actually already starting to do, it's really around content creation. So rather than relying on your agency to ultimately determine how many different assets you're going to have, you can actually develop multivariate content by using AI. You can change very quickly and readily the color of a button or change the call to action just by using AI. So that's one application where I do see it really trying to move far along in terms of speed to market. So it's just from the content creation perspective, but then also when you think about PMRC and your reviews that you have to take it through. Imagine if your reviewers actually had the ability to use AI to quickly scan, very fast, and doing it in a compliant way where there's been a lot of machine learning. There could be a possibility for AI to actually move along that legal review process potentially quicker than it has been. So that's kind of where I see it from a creative setting. However, there are also applications when it comes to segmentation. So by collecting all of our customers' data and understanding what their preferences are and their channels that they actually like to be receiving messages in, you can then predict out where would it be the most profitable for me to potentially reach my customer, and then be able to ultimately figure out different frequencies.
I know what talking
You could figure out different frequencies and how you would market to those different audiences. So there's segmentation, there's creative, there's legal, regulatory, and then I think finally it's really around how do you then just deploy and being able to have those channels really influence each other and having the next best action. So there are a lot of different things that I think could happen with AI and pharma, especially around gathering insights and being able to distill the data, because again, I think we've all heard it today, there's so much data out there in pharma. We have a lot of it at our fingertips, but how do you make sense of what's actually an insight and what's noise? So AI, I think, is going to help, pharma as well as other industries when it comes to insights development as well.
Yeah, and just building on that, I think it's one that we probably all in the room don't want to talk about, but as things become more efficient, obviously, then from a resource perspective, bandwidth perspective, there's savings, there's terms that if things can be done quicker, if things can be done through AI, it's making as much manpower behind it.
Yeah.
I think from a brand perspective as well, I mean, I like to say that we do AI light, but it truly is here to stay. So I'm a big proponent of working smarter, not harder, and leveraging the tools and the insights that we can gather from AI. But a good example of this in omni-channel action is something like a next best action that we use on our key marketing side of the house. So for example, if we were to, again, AI light here, but deploy an email to an HCP customer about, I don't know, a sample program, something like that. That email, if it gets opened, the data collected on who is opening it, what did they click on, what did they read, can be shared back with the field force. So they're armed with that information. Hey, your customer X is interested in our new sampling program rollout. Why don't you go to the office and see if you can drop them off, or see if he has a patient in mind that this product would be good for. And that's really online information conforming offline in an omni-channel way, so the message can continue, leveraging smart data and leveraging a suggestion coming from, an athlete, and the tools that we're using to have to bring it into different channels and make the conversation.
That's fantastic. Thank you. We're just coming up on the half hour. I would like to thank all of you. Sandy, Lina, Nikki, I knew a little bit about it. Now I feel like I know a little bit more to at least be dangerous out there. We're not planning on taking any questions, but I'm sure if you grab Nikki, Lina, or Sandy in the hallway, we'd be happy to chat with you and go a little bit deeper. But thank you to all three of you for joining us today.